Welcome to Reanimated episode 137. Hello, good morning. My name is Stuart. Joining me is HA. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Great. This is the punchy episode of Reanimated. I'm tired, but I'm here, and my body's not willing. My spirit, about 50% on spirit. So we're just gonna have to get through on pure moxie and caffeine today.
I know, but here in old Brooklyn, the pollen count is off the charts. So
they have trees in Brooklyn?
Yeah, they have a few trees. Yesterday, we went up to the park, Prospect Park. It's gorgeous, and we were, hanging out. Everybody was out, and just like being like, "Yay!" Like weather for frisbee playing and stuff. And I fell asleep under a tree and was covered in pollen when I woke up. So
Wait, you fell asleep under a tree?
I did on a blanket.
Is that advisable?
Probably not a good idea, but
I mean, I'm surprised you woke up with all your organs.
It's true. There were other people on the lookout, and plus there were some dogs around, so I knew I'd be all right.
Okay.
But yeah, I overdid it with the gym going yesterday, which resulted in a pretty hard nap at around 3 o'clock.
It's good when you have to have a hard nap.
Yeah. The rowing machine kicking my ass.
Good.
So, but it's probably good. It's one of those things where no matter how many times or how good you think you are at rowing, it still destroys you.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Do you have one at your house?
At my house?
Yeah.
A rowing machine? No.
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 You just go to that crazy gym with the tires and sacks of green, right?
Not anymore. But yeah, that was a little too high impact, honestly. But yeah, the giant tire flipping is fun, and it makes for a nice visual.
But you're done with those times.
That life is behind me. I'm just settling into middle age. So let's talk about the news.
Oh, okay. That was a nice deflect.
No, I've got nothing. I got no segue.
Good.
But I want to
That's
talk
good.
about David Fincher getting attached to
Yeah.
World War Z sequel. This
So-
is a big deal.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with the World War Z sequel. There were just a lot of issues. There were things happening at the studio, and there was a question about whether they were going to move forward with this sequel for a few reasons. One is that Brad Pitt was having a lot of tumult with his divorce from Angelina Jolie. And so there was some delays on that. Then also the studio execs, there was a bit of a shakeup there. Giannopoulos, I think is his name. Basically, they were kind of taking a look at some of the franchises that were there and whether they were going to move forward with this at all, even though it had originally been greenlighted. So I think Brad Pitt, because he, and what we should also say, it's the new studio boss is Jim Giannopoulos, and he has worked with both Fincher and Pitt. And so I think that helped a little bit in getting the negotiations off the ground. I also think Brad Pitt and David Fincher have a pretty good relationship. Obviously, they've worked on several films together, and they seem to be pretty friendly. And
Films such as Seven.
Benjamin Button.
There you go. There's one
and
more.
Fight Club, of course.
Fight Club. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, I think Brad Pitt, after Mark Forrester was just kind of off this project, said, well, I'd love to work with Dave Fincher again.
Do you feel like that's kind of a raw deal for, granted, World War Z had a lot of issues, but weren't they almost all script related and not director related?
They were, but I also think, I don't know Brad Pitt personally. I think he tends to get pretty invested. When he's associated with a film, I think he has a lot more involvement than other people. And I think I want to say he was one of the producers of World War Z, but maybe I'm incorrect on that. I'd have to double check.
Oh, I think people talk about this being like his project.
Right.
Like it's his money going into it.
So my guess is that if he wants to grab somebody else, he's going to do that. I don't know if Mark Forster had other things going on, which also may have played into this. Like the timing for all these projects is always very tenuous, just because so many conflicting obligations to other films and things like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Hey, maybe Brad Pitt's going through a tough time. He wants to deal with somebody who he knows and who he trusts, and Fincher is it.
Yeah, sure.
And but then again, David Fincher doesn't necessarily have the best track record with like he's okay with original films, but sequels and franchises, not so much. So we'll see what happens. But I am kind of wondering if maybe the storyline will get back to some of the original plot of the book, and maybe that could be a really positive thing, because that was one of I liked World War Z. I thought it was entertaining, but it definitely had no anything. Like it didn't seem like it's surprising to me that they even bothered calling it World War Z.
Yes, that was kind of absurd.
Yeah.
So you're saying he has a bad track record with franchises, and this article and Screen Rant that we're kind of referring to from all this information talks about Alien 3 being divisive. Personally, I like Alien 3. Sure, it's no aliens, but I like it. I like it better than Alien, frankly, because I like
Bite your tongue.
Charles S. Dutton and Peter Postlethwaite, or whatever his name is, was in that too. Peter, is that how you say his name? The late British actor who was amazing. And and Charles Dance, I think, is in Alien 3. I like that movie. I think it was a good film. The ending is a little bit odd, but I wouldn't say, he ruined the Alien franchise. If anything, one of my other favorite directors, oh God, I'm terrible at names, as you know now, but he has 3 names, and the last one is Genet. He's French. He did City of Lost Children. He did Alien 4 and kind of ruined it. It was really bad. The one with Winona Ryder.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was bad. And that guy's a great director, but I feel like sometimes you give people material that isn't in their wheelhouse, and it's just not going to work.
Right.
So the thing in this article, though, that I wanted to briefly mention is they're addressing the rating, how the initial World War Z had a PG-13, but the Screen Rant people are like, well, hopefully with Fincher's abilities and style, they'll be able to make it for cheaper and make it a popular R-rated film. Do you really think the rating of a movie has a huge impact on its success, especially making it more restrictive by making it rated R?
This is something that I've had discussions with people about. I personally don't think it matters, but it clearly does. I think that the R rating, maybe even subconsciously, people think is a little bit more edgy. And especially horror fans, like if you're thinking you're going to go in and see something kind of like toned down, maybe the PG-13 will dissuade you. I kind of think that anything related to this book, this franchise, is not going to have that issue, but I'm not in the room. So I don't honestly pay attention to ratings anymore, but I also don't have children. So maybe that's part of it.
I think you're right.
What's your take on it?
Well, my kids don't watch zombie stuff.
Yet.
They're really little. But yeah, Walking Dead has basically been making PG-13 TV because they can't do R, I'm pretty sure, unless people are starting to say fuck on networks. I don't think they are, but you can say shit on TV, and I'm pretty sure you can say shit all day and still be PG-13.
But what's so fascinating is that, I know it's the language thing, but Walking Dead is one of the goriest shows out there. So
that's
if you're talking about
is sex and language, but decapitation's no problem.
Yeah.
That's just the American paradox. Okay, but so Fincher coming to this project, I think neither of us can deny our excitement for this. It's still a long way off because they're talking about Giannopoulos having to greenlight it, and then it can start production next year, which means we're not going to see this till 2019, I assume.
Right. But maybe this is also a deliberate delay because of the divorce stuff for Brad Pitt, so maybe they also want him to settle down a little bit, which wouldn't be an unusual thing to want, to make sure it's a little bit on more even ground just in terms of when they're going to film. And also, if they are looking to overhaul the storyline and try to maybe bring it back or do whatever, they have a lot of thinking and plotting to do before them. And even if you think about it, 2018 is not that far off for that kind of thing. So they're going to have to figure out if they're going to actually start filming in 2018. That's, all the sites, all the, everything has to be in place for the most part. So I'm not surprised at that. And with all the delays, this is actually a pretty early date to start filming in my mind. But I'm looking forward to it. This note gave me a lot of excitement to see that he was associated with it. I definitely like Fincher overall as a director. And I actually, from the franchise point of view, I feel like that in this case is not necessarily going to be an issue because they didn't really do anything with the first storyline to relate it to the books at all. So it's hard, it's hard for me to really think of this as like a franchise per se.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I wish we could do a redo, like start over. Get Chris Pratt associated with a Max Brooks original, and it'll get greenlit and shot in 30 days and be amazing. Yep. It's just I follow Chris Pratt on Instagram, and the dude is never not working on a blockbuster now. He's kind of at the top of his career, so it's just funny to watch how fast he's going from like Jurassic Park to Guardians of the Galaxy to the next Jurassic Park to Passengers to the next Jurassic Park. Like it's just the dude is on a serious trajectory right now.
Well, you got to make hay while you can because that stuff doesn't always last that long. So
yeah, and those $60 million paychecks aren't. Wait, no, those will last you the rest of your life. You're fine. He's fine. He's fine.
They will, but a lot of actors, and it seems like he is one of them. Part of why they do all these things, aside from the fact that they're getting a huge payday, is to be able to work on other projects that mean more to them.
Yeah.
And also help produce and do all this other stuff. So. And you do it while you have the most influence. So it's pretty psyched to see what he does because he's super nerdy. But he did get in a bit of a kerfuffle this past week or so. Did you see that? Because he was saying, I guess he said during an interview that there weren't enough white-collar based characters in films and people just kind of lost their shit.
No, I didn't see that. But the dude's a big jokester.
Well, he said it and then he took it back and it was just like one of those things. And I'm like, Chris Pratt. Anyway, but on to our next bit of news. And so do you recall this character who is featured in this article? Because I think we talked about him some time ago when he had announced his first creepy project.
Is this the guy who was going to be doing all of his work out of like a second two-story walk-up surgical suite in India somewhere? Yeah.
Yes.
So this guy wants to take a frozen brain and put it into somebody else's skull. Yes?
Yes, but originally when we talked about him, his idea was to do a full head transplant. So in this case, he has moved away from that idea to just transplanting the brain, not the entire head. And his reason for doing this is to get around the rejection issues. What concerns me about this is that it makes me wonder how many head transplants he's tried to realize that there may be an issue with his scientific mad plan. But in any case, nothing too much with this article other than the fact that he's still out there and probably still practicing in some creepy walk-up in India.
And he has a marketing department where like he has a PR firm working for him. That's the worst part of this, where you're like, oh, he's just doing this. Why? To make headlines? Where's the...
Right.
What? Yeah. Right. Sure, he's pushing the envelope of science, and part of me appreciates that. But it's what he's doing is kind of terrifying on several levels, so...
Yeah. In other news and continuing news, a Lancaster man was arrested and he said that the reason why he went on his spree of craziness was that he was fleeing a zombie apocalypse. Surprisingly, this did not take place in Florida. And I know that many of our listeners are surprised at this news because it seems like every single one of these news stories has been out of Florida. But no, Pennsylvania, bringing it in strong. He really kind of just went a little crazy, attacked some police officers, and then also shattered some glass doors and windows, tried to gouge out somebody's eyes at a restaurant, and, basically committed petty larceny at a Wawa across the street from the restaurant where he did all this wonderful stuff. It took multiple tasers to bring him down, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, you know, I have to say there's been quite a few of these incidents going on, and I don't know if it's like a common sort of excuse, but it's just kind of odd in any case.
The genre is getting dragged through the mud by the crazies, so that's par for the course.
But bringing it in strong in the UK is our zombie Elvis boring marathoner.
The world's dullest marathon, is he calling it? Yeah. So this guy has previously run around his own town 17 times dressed as Elvis. And this time, what is he, a postman? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a postal worker.
He's going to do it as a zombie Elvis.
Right. He didn't qualify for the London Marathon, I think and he started doing this a couple years ago. So here he is, and he'll be doing it again, this time as zombie Elvis, and he's hoping that the makeup will stay on.
The real shout out has to go to the BBC in Suffolk Regional News for thinking that they needed to write about it.
Well, we read about it, so clearly they needed to write about it.
Yeah, but we have a problem.
True. I also have a question from friend of the show, Derek Bishop, who remembered a zombie novel written by a Marine or Navy SEAL or something. You recommended to me. I can't remember it, and I actually read it, and I can't find it on Google. Do you recall this? And there's apparently 2 books where he's like, I guess in the first one he's mostly on his own, and then the second one he gathers like a bunker of survivors. It is not ringing a bell with me, I'll be honest with you.
But we recommended it as being good. I've read bad versions of that.
Maybe we didn't recommend it. Maybe he thought we did. I don't know. And apparently,
we've only done a real small handful of book reviews and recommendations on the podcast. So
I'm not recalling this one. And the zombie origin is like an alien spaceship, and I really don't remember this.
No, that isn't. He's thinking of a different reanimated.
Okay, I just thought it was funny. And apparently when he did a Google search, he found a lot of potential storylines that match this. He's like, wow, there's a lot of zombie fiction out there. All right. Just thought it was worth a go. But all right. You ready?
Should we get down to the meat and potatoes?
Let's get down to it.
All right. Episodes 72 and 73 of The Walking Dead, or as we like to call them, season 6, episodes 5 and 6. AKA Now and Always Accountable. And I don't know that I understand either of those titles given the context now that I've watched the episodes again.
Yeah, I don't either, but
they don't always have to spout the line, but sometimes it helps to give a little more context. But however, Now, directed by Avi Uabian.
Uabian.
Thank you. Corey Reed is the writer. Came out in November 8th, 2015 to an audience of 12.4 million viewers. And picks up back at Alexandria. This one kind of picks up right where the last episode was Morgan on his little sabbatical.
Yep.
So, sorry, there are no episodes that run one into another on this this season.
Although this one, this Morgan did have a little bit back in Alexandria at the end of that one, but still.
Yeah, true. Because this episode does not deal at all with the wolf in the basement.
No.
Although it deals with a different wolf in a different basement, or at least in a crawl space. So this has a pretty interesting scene at the beginning. Do you know what I'm gonna spout off about at the beginning of Now?
Go for it.
Deanna. The first shot is of Deanna climbing a ladder to look out over the wall. Just to and look down into Alexandria and be like, oh, woe is me! Look at all the bodies in the streets. And
do you know what came to mind when she's like running up that ladder is like from Shaun of the Dead, where he runs up the children's ladder to see the sort of masses of zombies outside of the pub, and that's all I could think about when I saw her marching up that ladder. But
It's good. It's a good thing to have in your head. One thing we do notice is that Tobin is back. Remember good old Tobin, who we lost radio contact with?
yep.
Might as well have been assumed dead. We never find out why, what the rest of his day was like with the massive zombie parade situation. But he's made it back, and I guess whoever was with him or some number of them. And the number thing comes into effect because then we also have a large group of people in the streets after Rick gets back there and the zombie horde arrives. There are 30 people on screen in Alexandria.
Yeah.
So that I keep going on and on about how many people are in Alexandria because we get a different impression of this every
time,
every couple episodes.
Well, it also depends on what's going on, and maybe it's how much they wanted to pay extras that day. I don't know.
But a lot of these people are recognizable. There's a lot of Rick's group in this crowd. They're really, really tiny, but I paused it and counted, and I can see Carl and Tara, and I can see Carol and a few others, and then Tobin's in there, and there's that weird random dude with white hair. Like there's one old guy other than Deanna. They're like representing
wandering about
the 60 and over crowd. But it's just so surprising. Like, first of all, we've never seen this many people in Alexandria. Second of all, they just got destroyed by the wolves. So it's kind of it's surprising, and I don't know. It's also cool to see. Okay, no, there still are this many folk here.
Right.
But it's just surprising. Like even going forward in the show, I would not think there are that many people in Alexandria, even in season 7.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it is weird how they keep going. Especially, I think what's strange about how it happens is that there have been really important things going on in this community, things that you would expect everybody to show up for, and like the town meeting and all sorts of other stuff. And once the wolves attack and it's clear that the walkers are coming in and that they are a true threat, you would expect just a lot more people to have gathered, and it just seems to be very inconsistent in terms of how they treat it on the show.
Yeah. Speaking of inconsistencies, do you want to go on before I get to my amazing segue?
No, I'd love to hear your segue.
Speaking of inconsistencies, Rick's pep talk is he does a pep talk here when all the people are gathered, they're looking worried, and he delivers a pep talk, which is, we're going to be okay. We can do this. Everybody outside the walls is going to come back in and we're going to be great. And then he's like, everybody just has to be real quiet because there's enough zombies to surround us 20 times, 20 deep all the way around, but just be quiet as a mouse. And then he does not follow, and nobody follows this advice for the rest of the episode.
Nope.
Like standing up on top of the wall, but they're apparently still keeping guard, just standing on the wall, looking down at the zombies, like egging them on. He does like shooting practice. I don't think they don't shoot any rounds, but he's like standing up there with Ron doing shooting practice. Everybody in like Deanna's hammering on the gate at one point, just like, I hate you zombies,
Yeah, they're all being pretty loud and stupid. And also during this speech, Rick is being super loud.
I know, he's yelling at them.
He's doing his big
the
yell.
Noise to a minimum. It's just hilarious. It's so funny.
But I felt like the whole point of this wonderful speech was to show Rick's growing, impending, whatever leadership, whatever you want to call it. And that he is, we see this happening, and I felt like this was just the point where they were trying to show that, and part of how they sort of compound his I don't know. What's interesting is that his speech is not that far off from his original crazy speech, but now there's actually a threat. And then you have Aaron jumping in to sort of support him and say, look, it's my fault that the wolves found us. Rick's right. And you just see people falling in a little behind Rick more so than they were before, I think, where before they were giving him the crazy eyes while he was giving them the crazy eyes. Now there seems to be a lot more support for him.
Yes and no, because short-haired brunette chick is like, this place is already a graveyard. We don't have to pretend it's a grave.
Yeah.
because they're like, why did you leave us? And then we were overrun by the wolves, and there's a bit of of blame there, which is when Aaron jumps in. Aaron Aaron is being way too nice. Makes me think he doesn't have long to live.
Yep.
Being
I
nice to Maggie. Yeah,
immediately when he jumped in and he was featured so much in this episode, I'm like, he's gonna bite it soon.
he's gonna die. Deanna hilariously just walks away in the middle of the meeting while Tobin's like, Deanna, what are we gonna do? She's just
And
like,
also,
I'm out.
I did note that her makeup has become, if possible, even more haggard. Like she looks even worse than she did in the previous episode where or the previous time she appeared, where we noted that her makeup was making her look pretty rough.
Yeah.
And she is even, I think that they upped the haggardness by like 10 times here.
She's rocking some haggard.
I also did note that the lone couple of butterfly bandages, though dirty and kind of like starting to fall off, are still remaining on Rick's face. So those are some pretty impressive applications of first aid.
Way to go with that continuity show.
Yep.
So Olivia in the ration garage gets overrun, and Spencer comes to her rescue. I don't understand what the writers are doing with Spencer.
No, me neither.
It seems like they can't decide if he's a chicken shit or if he's a hero. And maybe this is just like, this is real. People aren't always one way. Maybe he'll be a cowardly hero. So he can shoot out the driver from the 18-wheeler one day and then cowardly steal a bunch of food from the garage after talking a bunch of people out of stealing food from the garage.
Right.
It's quite puzzling. So you really don't know where to land on Spencer.
I kind of feel like he's playing a weird game of Survivor, where he's somehow trying to game the system, and you don't know how you feel about him. And I think that he is a divisive character, and it is really tough to come to terms with his character, I think, because Reg and Deanna, despite the fact that they were definitely a little sheltered and had the blinders on in terms of the true situation, they were ultimately trying to do the right thing and trying to create a positive community. So Spencer being like he is a little bit surprising, given that he was raised by them. But hey, I guess there's always a bad seed somewhere. But yeah, and then we've also got some other folks in this community making some silly and bad decisions. It feels like a lot of the townsfolk are focusing on, the wrong things. Like Spencer's having these weird interactions with Deanna, getting drunk with all the food he stole. And then we've got our little friend Ron.
What's Ron doing? Like, what is his game?
See, again, as I said, like this is just somebody that I don't really get it. I guess we do have to have some sympathy for him. His dad used to be beating his mom up. He is,
and him.
Know,
if we believe Jesse, and the reason why he can't lift his arm over his head is because of his dad.
Right. And also Enid left, and there's that thing going on. So maybe he's got some competition with Carl. But I guess what I don't really understand here is how Carl is so trusting about him or even likes him. I don't know. It feels like, I don't know that Carl would be this helpful to him in sort of getting him weaponed up. This doesn't seem like a good idea, and I feel kind of like Carl knows better.
It's the first time we hear Ron or anybody really admit that Enid is his girlfriend, so I guess that was useful.
We did see them cuddling, though. They kind of
but that was because his dad had just died. I assumed it was more of like a "I'm gonna comfort you" than a "we are bosom buddies." It was between the little fracas he has with Carl, which is kind of laughable, like a slap fight between two teenagers.
I know.
To him going and narking on Carl, to Rick. It's not. I thought like maybe he's trying to get Rick to go outside the wire and risk his life and perhaps get killed, but it doesn't seem like he really has much of an agenda when he goes to Rick later on in the episode. It's curious. You got your Tara and Denise flirting, starting their thing. Don't really necessarily feel the chemistry there, although the woman who plays Denise is super charismatic. And so is Tara, but why? I don't know how they
It's tough to see that charisma. I don't, even watching it now, knowing that that's what's going on, I don't see it. And it's sort of the lack of chemistry between those two, or any kind of subtext is pretty, I don't know. I just think there's like nothing there. I do have a lot of sympathy for Denise, though, because she's definitely struggling in this new role, because now she's the only one with any medical knowledge, and she really doesn't have that much. Not as much as a true doctor would, and she's kind of responsible for everybody now, so that's got to be a pretty stressful spot to be in.
Slightly, yes.
And also a helpless spot. I mean, there's even if you had all the medical knowledge in the world, your ability as one person with that knowledge, and a lack of instruments and supplies and things like that, that's going to limit what you can do. And it's not like, even if you were, say, a general practitioner, you're not necessarily like a surgeon. So that's kind of a really stressful role in the community now. And she's like desperately trying to knowledge up with her Grey's Anatomy and stuff.
Just reading Grey's Anatomy, that'll get you everywhere you need to go. There's a scene where Jesse finds a zombie inside a house, and even after watching this the second time, when I went back and read the synopsis in Wikipedia, it says that this is Betsy,
right?
Of Betsy's my
David.
wife,
Yeah.
David and Betsy, yeah. Who has killed herself, neither of which did I pick up on. I assumed she was a leftover corpse from the wolf raid both times that I watched this. And I'm sure you saw more than I was.
I saw the wrists. It didn't connect to me the first time. Like you, I read the synopsis, and I didn't realize until reading it that this was supposed to be David's widow. But we do see, I feel like we saw Jesse kind of...
with her hand on a lady.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the same person, but
nope,
maybe.
Hard to tell.
Okay. So, yeah, agreed, though. It was a little confusing how they played this one, other than, I mean, the thing that I took from it the first time and a little bit the second time is that things are pretty bleak, and the community, people are reacting to the situation they're in, and they haven't had to deal with anything like this because they've been in a bubble. And none of them know how to fight, and this is just a terrifying, stressful, and I guess suicidal situation for some.
Yeah, exactly. This was Jessie is getting her groove, and maybe there's a silver lining. She does a really nice job of not letting, like, she opens the door and then squeezes the zombie's head and sticks a knife in her eye. Like, that's actually strong work, considering if she was the same woman that she was comforting at the meeting just that morning, then she's doing a really good job of taking care of business in the zombie apocalypse. And then the other people, they have those shots of all the other people's faces, like screaming and making horror faces. And I'm just like, come on, people, you've been living in the apocalypse for 2 years.
Right.
I know we're supposed to believe that these guys are all still like sheltered little sheep, but I think, come on.
Well, and the interesting thing, they show Jesse kind of taking care of business, like cleaning up the wolf lady that she killed and all that stuff. Like she's definitely coming into her own here, and just kind of like, all right, let's get to work. And so I think that they're using her for the most part as sort of an example of one of the community members finally stepping up and admitting what's going on. And that's pretty much what her speech says, is that we have to accept what's happening and deal with it.
Yeah.
And, of course, you read a little bit into that about what happened with her husband, and the fact that nobody was acknowledging that situation was going on. And so apparently the days of fantasy are over.
Sure. It's almost enough to make you think Jesse could be a long-term member of this cast and someone who really brings a lot to the table.
Almost.
So,
and then also within this episode, we've got the Maggie and Aaron.
Yeah, escape attempt.
Yeah. Is it Maggie's just looking for Glenn and doing her crazy thing, and has this whole thing was what led me to believe that Aaron was not long for this world. It's just because he was featured so much in it. He's so helpful. He's a stalwart for Maggie in this episode, and it's like, oh man, I don't see you hanging out too long after these interactions.
Yeah, they have a pretty gross fight with a couple of sewer zombies, and Maggie gets her hand stuck in a rib cage.
Yeah.
Never good when you get your hand stuck in somebody's rib cage during a knife fight. But they make it through, and then they get to the grate, and Aaron's like, "All right, let's do this thing," and Maggie just starts yelling like, "No!" And blows the game. The game's done, and so I'm like, "All right, why did you even bother going down there and getting into a knife fight with some sewer zombies if you weren't going to go through with it?" But fine.
They were pretty gross sewer zombies too. They were pretty. The makeup on them was pretty amazing. And then what else do we have going on here? There's also like the weird little interaction between the two where she confesses that she's expecting. To Aaron, and Aaron's all like, "Oh, you can name the kid Aaron. It's a boy or a girl's name." And I'm like, "Oh man, you were Walker Dust."
So at this point, after the scene with Aaron and Maggie, I honestly lost interest in the rest of the episode because it kind of went from this into a bunch of two people talking together about their feelings. The only important thing I feel like that happened was Deanna tells Rick, you're the leader now for this group after she has her fight with she's not a good zombie fighter, it turns out.
No, she just kind of like doesn't understand that you have to hit him in the head, so she's just bottling it
bottling it. She does knock over a really tall zombie. I think this might be the spear zombie because he's a big guy. She knocks him down somehow, very unlikely, and then stabs it in the chest 100 times, which I'm pretty sure zombies wouldn't even like flinch at, and they would just tear her face off. But she manages to get it down, and Rick finishes it off, and then they have their little "You're the leader." No, you're the leader, and okay. And then other people are talking. Spencer's talking about Spencer and Rosita have a quick conversation where she's like, "Just keep doing what you're doing," and then he's like, "I'm gonna eat my stolen crackers," and Deanna's hitting the fence, and I think Rick and Jesse have a conversation too.
And there's also kissing. So Rick and Jesse kiss, and Tara and Denise kiss. There's
and
lots of
I seriously tuned out hardcore after the Deanna zombie bottle fight.
Yeah, it was really draggy. This episode overall was kind of draggy and lots of conversations. But to sum up, the end involves Deanna hitting that zombie wall and the weird trickle of blood coming in. And yeah, that's about it for this episode. But lots of conversations in this. Still no sign of Glenn or what happened to Glenn. Really no sign of Daryl or Sasha or Abraham. So it's kind of a bummer. I just felt like it was I think basically the idea was to show how the townspeople are reacting to all this and to build up some of those characters a little bit more so that it's not just the Rick group. But it just seemed a little disjointed and to me it was not the most cohesive storyline. But then we leap into always accountable.
Always accountable. Who's responsible for this monstrosity?
You are all responsible for it. No.
Jeffrey January directed it, and then Heather Belson wrote it. And it came out in November 15th to 12.8 million viewers. And this is the Daryl, Abraham, Sasha story we all deserve, I suppose. They don't let them get home.
No.
Because a lot of this season is about like delaying the reunion, keeping all the pieces separate for some sort of big to do.
Although this episode does solve a little bit of the mystery, perhaps, about why maybe there's fewer walkers around with the whole fire line.
Perhaps. I mean, it's not totally clear to me the timeline for when because Sherry talks about having done that at the beginning, I feel like. It's not clear to me, but we know what's cool is to go back and watch this episode after watching season 7 and maybe season 8. I don't know, because Dwight and Sherry are still fairly significant characters. Yeah, significant characters on the show.
Which I'll tell you, when they first appeared, I did not think that. I mean,
No.
I knew that they were in the books, but I was like, oh, what are they going to do with them? Like, it wasn't clear to me that they were going to be long-standing characters. So yeah, it's interesting watching this in retrospect.
Yeah. It is very interesting also because Dwight is a very different character when we first meet him than when we see him again. And we get to know him a lot better in season 7, but in this, it's like a fresh-faced, naive young version of him, even though he's talking about how he used to be way more naive and fresh-faced. So
Hard
it's
to
kind of funny.
believe, but
I know.
okay.
I know. But let's. So first, we have Daryl, Sasha, and Abraham talk like leaving the zombie horde 20 miles away from Alexandria and trying to drive back, and then they get ambushed like right away
Right.
by 3 different cars full of people and machine guns who shoot first and ask questions later. And it's at first I'm like, what? Who are these people? What's happening? And it turns out, oh wait, these are ridiculous amateurs who just
Yep.
think that they can drive around and shoot, but really just get themselves killed. Like Sasha and Abraham
Take them out.
shoot a car full of people who were just sitting there not doing anything. The another car drives around a corner and into a horde of zombies and hits a truck, and then I'm sure they get just eaten.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think only the SUV group of guys gets away. It's pretty laughable. But this gets Daryl and Sasha and Abraham separated. Daryl ends up in the burned forest and meets Dwight, Sherry, and Tina, while Abraham and Sasha go off and I guess ship, which I was unexpected and also not really feeling that connection or
Agreed.
chemistry.
Like even when they were talking about it again, and they're actually talking about it in this episode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, when did that happen? Because that isn't unclear. So
Towards the end, when Abraham's like, a man can tell, I'm like, sorry, this man could not tell. She's never looked at you.
no, ever.
No. And most of her looks in the last few episodes have been looks of
Surly.
despair. Looks of despair. Not looks of, hey,
What's
it's
up?
dolphin smooth. Yeah. So not sure exactly where that came from, but sure, I'll go along with it. So Daryl's kind of hurt,
Yep.
which gives H.A. Conrad a chance to look at his guns.
This is true because he takes off his coat, so and also I don't know if you noticed this, but his hair went through so many different like in your face moments, like where it's just totally greasy and sweaty, and in his eyes to the end where you can't even see his face, like you can't see his eyes at all because of the overhang of hair. It's just like, man, the stylist on this must have just been like, all right, come over here, we're gonna make it even worse.
Here we
Now
go.
you can't even see anymore because you're so in such despair.
I really like the way Daryl handled being a hostage.
Yeah.
He didn't really try to talk his way out of it. I mean, Dwight did tell him he would shoot him if he talked anymore,
Right.
but it's just funny. Like he's so laconic and kind of doesn't volunteer information.
There's so much of a you have no idea who you're dealing with without him saying anything that
Yeah.
it's really great. So kudos to Norman Reedus for his performance in this.
Yeah.
When I first watched this, it wasn't clear to me if they were running away from maybe the wolves or something like that, and then I was
Yeah.
like, oh well, it can't be because they'd be in much worse shape, and they'd probably the wolves don't really keep people alive unless they're going to bring them into their little pack. But at first, I was a little bit confused about who they were running from. And
Yeah, and
you
we're
know,
supposed to be because they have a whole lexicon. They're talking about all this stuff
about
because
kneeling
among
to
them,
people and all
yeah,
that
among
stuff.
themselves and how, yeah, and then it's never really explained at all. And we it's also interestingly shot because we don't get to see many of this group of, I mean, it's the Saviors. We don't get to see many of them except for Cam, and we see this guy called Wade from the waist down. It's
Cut off
so-
Cam's arm. Yeah.
it's quite an interesting approach to keeping the mystery
Alive.
for later.
Although, I don't know how you felt about this. So we got Daryl with this group and, with this trio. But Dwight, Tina, and who's the third person? Sorry.
Sherry.
And they're kind of like walking along looking for things. They want to go to the fuel station, and Daryl knows what they're going to find there, and he does try to warn them off. but it's even when the group of people that are pursuing them finds them, it's weird how they find them. Like, how did they even really know that they were there? And also, once they do, they give up pretty quickly. Like, it's a kind of an odd it's a very odd thing, because it's like they wasted all this fuel going to look for them, and then they let them go pretty easily. And one of the they kind of confront them. Daryl helps them escape, and then they say something like, "Oh, after they cut off Cam's arm, the boss only wants willing ass," or something like that. Like, did you feel? I felt like that was a little strange, that they had gone through all this effort to try to track them down and just to let them go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's also very strange how they got to within like 20 meters of Daryl with a deuce and a half truck before he noticed that they were driving,
like they're crashing through the woods.
Yeah. He's like, holy, what? They're right there. What? You would have heard them a mile away. But okay. Daryl also, it's funny to watch him like kind of out of his comfort zone, being the recruiter, being friendly Daryl.
Yeah, like, he's trying really hard, but reluctantly.
He asks Dwight the 3 questions. It doesn't seem natural at all.
No, and it feels like he's very uncomfortable with it. So
yeah, like he's asking him out on a date or something. Oh, and we're on board with Dwight. He seems like he's burying his sister-in-law, I guess.
Yeah.
But they seem like good folk, and that's why the end really kind of throws you for a loop and catches you off guard this episode.
Right. Well, I mean, and then they have the whole weird Patty illusion, like, oh, Patty's gone, and you'd think it's a person, but it's not.
Well, what is Patty? I never understood that.
Oh, the fuel truck that he gets is the Patrick whatever. The license plate has Patty something on it.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were probably looking for fuel to either barter or get away, and they knew about it somehow. Because they're clearly locals, and they said that they were the ones that started the fire, so they definitely have a knowledge of what's going on here. So I think that was their hope of salvation or something.
I see. Okay.
And then Daryl finds the fuel truck after they steal his motorcycle.
Because the show, the cinematography shows us all these lady faces, lady zombies, and it's like, where's Patty?
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't do it very well, but that's, I think, what they were getting at.
Yeah. Another thing that is bizarre, and I kind of really don't like this part of this season, is Abraham's discovery of an RPG in the town that he and Sasha are holding up in. Is also, I'm not a huge, aside from all their romantic BS, I don't really like Sasha's preachifying at him about, like, you need to be smarter surviving and don't take risks. I'm like, you're in no position to give anybody a lecture right now.
Miss running off into the...
lying down in a hole full of dead. So I'm like, oh, shut up. You're not the person to be giving anybody advice. But Abraham, takes it, but then he also goes and does something really dumb, but then admits that it's dumb. But okay, so the thing is, they find like a really nice, modern, shiny RPG rocket propel grenade on a U.S. military person. Hard to tell. I tried looking up what the patch was that he was wearing, but it doesn't. It's like a Raven, very strange patch. It's probably not a real one. Which, Fear the Walking Dead, they actually had real patches on their soldiers. They were from a San Diego Guard unit. However, the American military does not use rocket propel grenades. This is a Russian or a former Soviet Union weapon. So it's very unclear to me what this guy was doing with it, why it's there. It's obvious that the show wants us to think that it's an American weapon, and it comes back into play later on in the season in another way. But so am I the only person for whom that took me out of suspension of disbelief?
Well, I didn't know any of that, so thanks. So it didn't for me. No, although it did make me wonder where they were getting. It did make me wonder where they were getting these weapons and why they had them where they were. Though you just mentioned something with the San Diego folks. Is that how are they somehow going to link the two shows with Fear the Walking Dead?
Oh, I don't think so. And like I
Okay.
said, the patch that guy was wearing, I was unable to find a similar. You only see it for a real
Okay.
glimpse, and I was unable to find if it's a real unit or not. So
Okay.
I don't think
Well,
it
in
is.
any case, I also think it would be unlikely to find this kind of weaponry in the rural South, no matter what's going on there.
Depending on the amount of mobilization, you might find shoulder launched rocket weapons, anti-tank weapons, which is what an RPG basically is, although they're also anti-personnel versions. It's just that an RPG is not an American gun or an American weapon, and the only people who would have them in this country are like arms dealers, not soldiers.
Hmm.
So
All right.
that's the difference.
Well, I think the more you know.
The more you know. So yeah.
Yeah, and so at the end of this episode, after all the weird shipping between Abraham and Sasha, which again, I totally agree with you, does not feel natural in any sense to me. They end up getting reunited with Daryl, and Daryl's got the fuel truck. It's all happy, happy, and then they've got the sort of ending shot, which is where Daryl's like on the radio trying to raise some folks from Alexandria, and all they hear is a little voice go, "Help."
Help. Did you use your magical powers of voice interpretation to figure out who that was? Who was that?
I mean, I wanted it to be Glenn, but, I wasn't, there was no way for me to identify that. Rick, I'm
Yeah.
better at identifying because he's got, maybe it's because he's doing like the British to American accent. He has a pretty distinctive cadence
Yeah.
compared to other folks, but the help I couldn't do anything with.
It's kind of high pitched. It could be Glenn. It could be like an Aaron or a Spencer
Could be a Carl.
or a Carl. Yeah. One other thing that was kind of annoying in the Sasha and Abraham. There's obviously a lot of things that were annoying in the Sasha Abraham part of this, but so there's a guy in the office. There's a zombie in a conference
Yeah.
room, and they're like, "Oh, Abraham wants to kill it." Sasha's like, "Don't. It can't get out. It's not going to hurt us. Let's just leave it. You don't need to handle that. Why are you in such a hurry to do that?" And Abraham's like, "Loose ends make my ass itch." And I'm like, you know what? They also make my ass itch. There's no way they're going to sleep in that room
With that thing there.
bouncing off the glass and growling at them. No, I don't. And as poor Tina found out, glass can break when there are zombies encased in it in a greenhouse.
Although she pretty much just like laid down and took it. So,
When the
but
glass breaks, she decides to then just fall into their arms and get eaten.
yeah, like it was kind of whatever. But then they don't have the insulin issue anymore. So there
True.
you go.
Solve
Which is
that problem.
Which is why I assumed they got rid of her, because that would be a problem that is pretty. I had a lot of questions about that insulin situation because I just don't think that at this point there would be enough left over that's refrigerated and okay.
Yeah.
For poor diabetics, I just think you're not going to survive the Walking Dead world.
They have a post-apocalyptic diabetics wise. There was a scene in like an early episode of The Colony season 1. I don't know if you ever saw that show. I like that show. Where actually it's Lori, Sarah Callies, I think her name is. I forget her. She is trying to find insulin for her sister-in-law's kid, and somebody's like making it in their backyard, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to buy." It's like chicken piss or something. I forget exactly what the ingredients are, but somebody is making like a homebrew insulin at home. So I'm just saying, like, maybe there's a way, some witch doctor stuff, you could pull that off. But yeah, I agree that it would have been a tough
Unlikely.
sell. It would have been a tough sell. And then, people with these kinds of skills are getting more and more rare in Walking Dead land.
Right. And I not just diabetes. That's one that just seems pretty. I mean, I think a lot of health issues. If you've got something that you need to have consistent medication, insulin to me is just a difficult one because it does need, for the most part, needs to be refrigerated or it goes bad, and it does have a shelf life, like it expires. So, but yeah. So that's pretty much it for this episode, unless you have a few other observations.
And I guess that's kind of it. There were a few other things, but nothing worth going back in time for. So I guess Yeah, that wraps up. What are these episodes? 5 and 6. And next time we'll be doing 7 and 8
Yep.
right for The Walking Dead. So hit us up again that time, and we will continue to struggle our way through season 6. It's a fun struggle, but a struggle nonetheless.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, until next time, if you'd like to drop us a note, tell us how you're enjoying or not enjoying rewatching season 6 with us. We're reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or leave a comment on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com. So until next time, ciao.
Thanks for listening. Bye.